Hello and welcome to this episode of our program Daily Debate. Today we have two important segments. The first one would be the national unity among all Egyptians. That would be Egyptians as a whole, Muslims and Christians. And this is a very important file that should be tackled. Of course, President Mohamed Morsi, throughout his speeches, has said that he will be the president of all Egyptians, Muslims and Christians. He also confirmed that he will preserve the rights of the Christians of Egypt. That is a must. That is what we call it, the national unity that Egypt has lived in throughout the years. Our next file would be about economy, the Egyptian economy, which has seen ups and downs, most of them downs during the past period, but in this upcoming future, we hope it will go up for the sake of course, of Egypt. We start first with the top stories of the day, and the Constituent Assembly headed by Councillor Hossam El-Gheriani, head of the Supreme Judiciary Council, meets, or rather they met on Monday at the Shura Council headquarters. The meeting focused on discussing the ruling system in Egypt to be adopted in the country's new constitution. Meanwhile, the 5 committees of the Assembly are to elect their heads. The 5 committees tackled different files. Those are the ruling system, rights and freedoms, main elements of state supervisory bodies, in addition to a committee for drafting the constitution. And President Mohamed Morsi met on Monday with Kuwait's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Ahmed Al-Sabah, at the presidential headquarters. Al-Sabah delivered a message to Morsi from Kuwait's Emir, Sheikh Sabah Al-Jaber Al-Ahmed Al-Sabah. During the meeting, Morsi and Al-Sabah discussed bilateral relations as well as pan-Arab relations. They also discussed regional and international issues of mutual concerns. And the Cairo Criminal Court postponed the trial of businessman Ahmed Aiz to October 4th to announce the verdict. The businessman is charged with money laundering of more than £6 billion. The court heard the testimonies of the prosecution witnesses during today's hearing. Meanwhile, the Supreme Administrative Court also heard the appeals of former President Hosni Mubarak, former Prime Minister Ahmed Nazif, and former Interior Minister Habib Al-Adli on the verdict, obliging them to pay a fine of £540 million for cutting the internet and mobile communication during the revolution. And moving on, and traffic returned to normal on Monday in the capital's Tahrir Square after demonstrators removed the stage which was set up near the American University in Cairo. Some protesters continued their sit-in in the middle of the square. The demonstrators are protesting against the Complementary Constitution Declaration and are against the dissolution of the parliament. They are also calling for fulfilling the rest of the revolution's demands. And the Syrian army kept up its bombardment of rebel neighborhoods of the central city of Homs on Monday, while violence killed at least 7 people. Before I come up here, they reached 30 across the country. The highest death toll was in the eastern province of Deir az-Zor, where 4 civilians were killed when the car they were traveling in was shelled. In related developments, Italy's cabinet approved sending up to 17 unarmed troops to participate in the UN observer mission in Syria. A statement from the office of Premier Mario Monti said that the first 5 are expected to be on the ground by next week. And the head of the Arab League called in Cairo for the fragmented Syrian opposition to unite and said a UN-brokered plan for a transitional government in Syria fell short of expectations. Arab League Secretary General Nabil Al-Arabi addressed nearly 250 members of the Syrian opposition at a meeting in Egypt's capital in an effort to coax the desperate groups to pull together. The gathering marked the first time the Arab League had hosted a gathering of the Syrian opposition. The Cairo meeting was boycotted by the Syria-based rebel fighters and activists who denounced it as a conspiracy that served the policy goals of Damascus, allies Moscow and Tehran. The 2-day meeting, attended by the main exiled opposition bloc, the Syrian National Council, and other smaller groups, is intended to forge a common vision for a political transition in the country after 16 months of bloodshed. This, as Syrian President Bashar al-Assad issued 3 new counter-terrorism laws on Monday, nearly 16 months into this deadly crackdown. The text of the laws passed on Thursday said that those who create or direct terrorist groups may be sentenced with 10 to 20 years of hard labor, but the punishment may be more severe if the goal is to change the regime or the structure of the state. We don't know what will this mean to the Syrian opposition. And Israel's army said in a statement that Israel had carried out an air raid on the Gaza Strip early Monday. The army said the target was hit, but Palestinian witnesses said the strike on Deir al-Balah region in the central Gaza Strip caused no casualties or damages. Violence broke out at the end of June between the two sides as hostilities interrupted a fragile truce observed for more than a year by Hamas. And for the 6th consecutive session, we are returning here to local news and Egypt's stock market in particular. The Egyptian stock market achieved more gains at its closing session on Monday that went beyond £11.3 billion. The rise in dealing came as a result of purchasing operations by optimistic Egyptian and Arab investors who decided to invest more after President Mohamed Morsi took office, backed by new cooperative deals with the IMF, the World Bank and Islamic Bank of Development. The total market capital of the companies registered in the bourse went up to be £351.2 billion against £339.9 billion at the closing session on Sunday. The benchmark index EGX 30 went up by 4.97% to reach 4,942.41 points. The wider range index EGX 100 also went up by 3.5 to close at 755.21 points, while the EGX 70 index for small and medium-sized shares went up by 3.2% to reach 435.82 points. And now back to our first segment and this report on this file of the national unity.
Egypt's new president, Dr. Mohamed Morsi, met with the Christian leaders and the families of those killed in the uprising, seeking to broaden support. Morsi said that his first appointment as president of Egypt will be a woman and a Coptic Christian as vice president as he moves to ease the fears of the brotherhood. If a Coptic Christian becomes a vice president, it would be the first time in Egypt's history a Copt has held such an elevated position. In his first speech to the nation, Morsi stressed that he will be the president of all Egyptians, Muslims and Christians. He also said that the Coptic Christians would be his partners in building the country. The Copts are partners in the nation, and they have all the rights as well as the Egyptians are equal in the rights and obligations. No such pledge has ever been made to Copts in the history of modern Egypt. Today, this is an Islamist making that pledge, who became Egypt's new president. Dr. Mohamed Morsi said that Egyptian Coptic community are part of the social fabric of Egypt, and they are afforded the same rights and freedoms as all Egyptian citizens, and any reduction of those rights will only result in social unrest and instability. Bishop Pachomius, who is enacting Coptic Pope following the death of Pope Shenouda III earlier this year, has asserted the importance of building a progressive civil state based on active citizenship. Egypt's Coptic community suffered under Mubarak regime, which prohibited them from building Coptic churches. They hope that the Egyptian revolution would see a move toward the civil, democratic and pluralistic state.
The only task is to take care of our kids.
خلص كل شيء انتهى.
Welcome back, and we have with us Bishop Mouneer Anis, Bishop of Anglican Episcopal Diocese of Egypt and the Middle East, who already attended a meeting with President Mohammed Morsi. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening.
And before we go to any details or any questions, how was the meeting?
The meeting was very warm and friendly, and the president was down to earth, very humble, very welcoming. We felt that it's a very good initiative of him to invite all Christian heads of churches to assure them and to listen to them, and it was a very, very good atmosphere.
During his few statements that he gave in Tahrir, or when he took oath, or even after that in Cairo University, he was keen on speaking about the national unity file. And he was so keen to emphasize the importance of unity among all Egyptians. How do you view his statements?
I think it is a very, very encouraging statement to say, I am the president of all Egyptian Christians and Muslims, and he will do his best to guarantee social justice among all people, Christians and Muslims. So he mentioned this in Cairo University, where I attended as well. And he said it in the private meeting in the presidential palace as well. So that is very assuring, of course, to state that he is the president of all Egyptians. But to achieve this, there are a lot of requirements, of
Exactly, and we're going to speak about the requirements. But first, even before he took his oath, he met with the head of the churches. How did you view the timing of those meetings?
I think he was very keen to assure the Christians who probably most of, not all of them, voted for Shafi, not for him. He wanted to assure them that although they didn't vote for him, but he will be their president. He will look after them. He will look after their rights. And he said that I don't like the word assuring for the Christians, assuring the Christians, because the Christians and the Muslims are equal. And he said very important thing. He said, if I didn't work for the welfare of the Christians, I would not be a good Muslim. I would not be a Muslim.
Indeed.
So being a Muslim, I have to be fair with everyone.
Indeed.
And I remember very well, as were coming in, the Coptic Catholic Bishop Yohanna Kulta, said to him, you are now sitting on the seat of Amr ibn al-As. So he said, this is very difficult statement, because Amr ibn al-As was very just with everyone. When Amr ibn al-As came, the Christians were the majority in Egypt. That was the 7th century, and the Christians were the majority. And yet, he was very careful not to use any of the churches or use any of the Copts' houses, so that in the future, no one will occupy these churches or turn these churches into mosques. So it's a very difficult task to be very just and fair with everybody. But yet he hoped to be like Amr ibn al-As, of course.
Definitely. Before we go to the requirements, we have to speak about the fears. From your point of view, what kind of fears are there on the ground for the Christians of Egypt?
The Christians in Egypt suffered quite a lot during the past decades. They suffered because although they are Christians, they are citizens, they fought the wars, all the wars of Egypt, 48 and 61 in Yemen, and 76 and 73, and their blood was mixed with their fellow Muslim
All
soldiers.
Egyptians.
All Egyptian.
Exactly.
They did all this. They were very loyal. They participated in political life in the past, in economic and in scientific and education. They were very much integral part, and yet they were deprived from some of their rights to build churches, the rights to hold very important positions like university presidents or professors. There was some difficulties.
Restrictions.
In these things. And although Egypt, of course, signed the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights that affirm the rights of citizenship and citizens, regardless of religion, there was in many circumstances a sense of discrimination. And that's why, and that's behind.
What was the sense of discrimination other than that they did not hold such positions? I mean,
remember, when people want to build a church, it takes up to 10 years for the president himself to issue a decree. It was not, they were not treated exactly like building mosques. It was very difficult to do this. And sometimes in a village, when they gather in a house, people feel that this is forbidden, they should not do this, they are under attack, they are questioned, and so on. They cannot be trusted enough to be in the security, for example, or in high positions in the army. So there was some difficulties regarding in the past, but also the Islamists face the same oppression.
Exactly. This is what I wanted to comment, because Islamists, as the Christians, they both had the same difficulties. They were all questioned by police apparatus.
But if I be frank with you, now the Islamists, like Muslim Brotherhoods, Salafi, are free. They even reached the top places like the parliament, the Shura Council, and now we have a president who is a nomination from the Muslim Brotherhood. But the Christians still didn't see the fruits of the revolution. Like in the last 17 months, no one tried to issue the decree for building churches. There was a trial. Even Al-Azhar pushed this. And I must say, in Beit al-Aila, we discussed this, the Grand Imam and all the Muslim leaders were very much in favor of producing a decree for building churches, but nothing happened. So still the Christians didn't feel, they are still hoping and waiting for this kind of equality and the right of citizenship, which of course President Morsi promised to happen, and we will wait.
Bishop Anis, you've been speaking about requirements, requirements of the Christians community in Egypt. How do you view those requirements?
I think I was talking about requirements for national unity, not for the requirements of the Christians only, but the requirements for national unity. I must say, before I say the requirements, Egyptians are religious, whether Muslims or Christian. They worship God, they are keen worshiper, and they are loyal to their faith, and two faith communities, both of them are very strong faith communities. So religion is very important for Egyptians, all of them.
Exactly.
For this reason, it is very important for a Christian to appreciate that Muslims are faithful, and they are strong in their faith. And the same with Muslims as well, that Christians have their rights, they worship the same God, the one and only God. Some misinformation and misconception and misknowledge come to us, which is very strange for Egyptian.
Before we take these misconceptions, we have with us Dr. Mahmoud Ad-Dinawi, Professor of Islamic Studies,
Yes.
over the phone. And good evening to you, Dr. Mahmoud.
Good evening.
And we were speaking about the file of the national unity. We were speaking about assurances by Dr. Morsi that Egypt will always remain strong through the unity of its people, whether they are Muslims or Christians. How do you view the importance of such a file?
Yeah, that's highly important because for a very long time we lived all together as one community. We are brothers, and we are, as your guest mentioned, that we belong to maybe the same families in a way. So in Islam, all people should live in peace. There is no difference between whether it's Muslim, Christian, Jewish, whatever his religion is.
Mm-hmm. From your point of view, some Christians have their own fears, or rather, if I may say, requirements from the new president. How would you acknowledge such requirements?
I think these fears are baseless because originally all people, I think they will have the best protection under Islam, because in Islam they are protected. Anybody, any Muslim who oppresses, who makes a kind of oppression to a Christian in a way, he is not a real Muslim, because during the time of the Prophet, all followers of religions, Jews, Christians, they lived in one community. I remember one of the stories that a Christian delegate, they came to the mosque of the Prophet and they offered their prayer there, right? So we are in one community, we are like one family. We lived for more than 1,000 years, and we are living in the same house in a way.
That is exactly the case in Egypt, but even though they have their own fears right in the moment, from your point of view, is it deeds or words that should be taken here? And what kind of deeds should be given to them to calm them down? Or to calm their fears?
I think the president's speech a few days ago, he affirmed that all people will have privileges, will have rights, and all people are equal before the law, and there is no privilege for a Muslim over a non-Muslim. We are equal in all rights in a way.
Right. Dr. Mahmoud Ad-Dinawi, Professor of Islamic Studies, we thank you very much for joining us. And back to you, Bishop.
I'm so
Anis.
glad that Dr. Mahmoud mentioned this incident of Prophet Muhammad inviting the Christians to pray in his mosque in Medina. Now, Christians cannot even enter Medina. What happened? A change of knowledge, change of ethics as well. So the beautiful ethics of the Prophet invited the Christians to pray in his own mosque and in Medina. So a kind of a correction of knowledge need to happen.
I remember that that Pope Paulo II or John Paul II has made the same initiative before he dies. And I remember that he gathered all people from all religions to pray together.
In Assisi.
Yes,
Yes.
in Assisi.
Yes.
So
that actually happened. The point is, there is now lack of information about the tolerance of Islam itself among many people. People think that if a group of Christians gathered and started to pray, that is forbidden, that's haram. And that...
Definitely not, by all means.
Of course.
Definitely not.
That
not
is,
in the Egyptian case.
No, there is, because we heard, for example, about stopping people from praying in a small hall or burning a small hall or things like this.
Yes,
that
but
happened.
these
yes.
were very individual acts by radicals.
I know,
and
but
radicals.
we need to ask ourselves
Exactly.
why these things happen. It is when you go into the internet, you find two different views. The views, the moderate views, the good views, the healthy and sound faith views of Al-Azhar, for example, that say, oh, Christians should have their places of worship.
That is the essence of Islam.
That is the teaching of Islam.
Exactly.
While other people say, no, they should not. So these both views are in the internet. And young people read this and read this. And they think that the more aggressive, more fanatic views are the true. So what we need to do, what is the requirement?
Exactly.
Is more education. Education of people who are educated. And we, Egyptian people, are very like obedient and simple. If someone like the president said, people of Egypt, Christians, has the same right like Muslims in worshiping God, and it is our duty to help them to worship God. As he actually said in the meeting, I would not be a Muslim if I didn't look after the and protected the Christians. I would not be a Muslim. So I think people at the grassroots level need to hear these words because this will change their mind. The other thing, I think, is education. If we cared for education and helped the school children to accept the difference and accept the others and respect the difference and see the difference and the diversity as a richness in the Egyptian society, I think, and help these students to grow in this way, I think this will enhance the national unity. The third and the most important is activating and enhancing the rule of law. When these individual things, individual incidents, as you mentioned, happen, what happened? No law. It's all reconciliation, try to reconciliate and avoid applying the law all the time. I think if we applied the law on everyone, so the Christians who build without a license, that's breaking the law. And in the same time,
Right.
if the Christians applied to build,
Exactly.
the law should be applied as well.
Right. Everybody, every citizen in Egypt, or all Egyptians, should abide by the law and the new constitution that will be drafted soon by the Constituent
Yes.
Assembly.
Yes.
And we have to end it up here, but we have to say at the end that deeds, not words, what we want to see in this upcoming future for this file.
Actually, that is one of the themes of the election.
Right.
Deeds, not words.
Right.
And we are waiting for this.
Right. Bishop Mouneer Anis, Bishop of Anglican Episcopal Diocese of Egypt and the Middle East, we thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
And back to this report on the economic situation in Egypt.